Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show, powered by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. And yes, those of you watching the Sam Cam, so perhaps YouTube or Spotify, or whichever of the podcast platforms that carries video that we are on, those are our two preferred places. You'll see that I am not in my usual studio. Very observant of you. Yes, I am on location in Prague this week. The show is on the road, so forgive me. Yesterday was a travel day. I had to fly over here, so I could not do the program, so did a replay from last week. Please forgive me. I hate to do that. Occasionally it's necessary. So these next 2 weeks, I think, are, for me, a little bit fluid because of some travel. My daughter is finishing out her year, or just finished her year of study abroad. Her 8th grade year successfully completed here in Prague in the Czech Republic. And if you're new to the program and you're wondering, what the hell is my Las Vegas political talk show coming from Prague? What's going on? And I think I heard him there a little while before. Why is his daughter there? Good questions. Let me quickly tell you why, because it will lead into a couple of very important topics I want to cover today. So my parents are from here. My parents were both born and mostly raised in Prague. They then certainly came of age during communism. Their formative years spent under Stalin. Horrifying stuff. Communism was why they left the country. And when 1960s, middle 60s here, there was some hope that the regime would end. Young people were optimistic that a future perhaps with greater freedom, with more opportunity, would be on the horizon. There was some desire here, even in the upper echelons of the Czechoslovakian Soviet government, to break away from the Soviet Union. And against all of that, going on, the Soviets invaded. Moscow sent troops to reconquer, if you will, Czechoslovakia. A period of time is called the Prague Spring. And it was during that occupation of the country by Soviet troops, as it was happening, that both my parents left the country. And they went to, my mom went to Paris, to France. My dad went to the Netherlands, went to Amsterdam. And eventually they married and came to the U.S. legally. Now, part of that story, and hearing from them over the years how difficult it was to come to the U.S. and to do it right, to follow the rules, to go to the embassy, to go to the consulates, to do the paperwork, to pay the fees. I mean, all of it is what informs a great deal of my views now on immigration. It comes from my story growing up in an immigrant household. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. I think there's some current events here that I want to address. But the other thing that really has struck me as I got off the plane yesterday and getting set up here, and I'm just walking around Prague, and everywhere you go, you see some reminders of the former regime. Czechoslovakia, before World War II, was wealthier than Germany. It was more industrialized than Germany. By the way, Czechoslovakia is or now the Czech Republic, is immediately due east and neighbors Germany. So, it was a country that was next door. And in the interwar period between World War I and World War II, Czechoslovakia was a very wealthy first world country. Now, the war itself, obviously a traumatic event. There was enormous disruption caused by the war, Allied bombing, 1945, some in 1944, obviously was destructive. But nothing would prove to be as destructive as 40 years of socialism. Now, I'm bringing this up because we're having a Rubicon moment in the U.S. There is an alarming number of people, and they're not just in New York City, folks. We can't be this naive. Alarming number of people, particularly young people, who have been completely brainwashed by their teachers, by their professors, and who, honest to goodness, believe that socialism is the way forward. And I've been reading about this. I've been following this because I think we conservatives are making a tremendous mistake with this Zohran Mamdani guy. He's the buffoon running for mayor in New York City. It is, I think it is foolish of us as conservatives, as patriots, as Americans, as common sense people to dismiss this guy out of hand. He is tremendously persuasive. He is very charming. He's an excellent speaker. He has a talent, okay, that perhaps Obama had it. Certainly Joe Biden didn't have it, and Kamala Harris didn't have it, where they can give empty platitude answers and make it sound gorgeous. Remember, again, the people that they're speaking to are largely lobotomized idiots. A guy like this is why Obama was so successful. Much of what came out of Obama's mouth was nonsense, was gibberish, but it sounded good. It made people feel the tingles. Never forget Chris Matthews. Well, Obama was speaking, and he's, I got tingles going up my leg. Chris Matthews, MSNBC. Well, I'm just bringing it up. I am certain that this Mamdani guy is giving people tingles all over again. Yet what he is proposing is no different than the ideology that took my parents' country, the one I am currently in, and took it from first world to third. I'll tell you what socialism does. It creates poverty wherever it goes. Everything that socialism has touched has turned to poop. Can't say the actual word on the radio, but here we go, right? It's turned it all to you know what? It's a matter of record. We don't like to talk about the record. They go to this Mamdani guy, he's running for mayor, right? They say, okay, well, their plan is to raise taxes. Billionaires are going to just leave and go to Florida. He's like, no, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to convince them because we're going to use that extra 2% and make life good for everybody. Do people have any idea how terrible it was here for everybody across the board? I remember stories growing up, and this was, still in the 80s when the Berlin Wall hadn't fallen yet. The Eastern Bloc, the Warsaw Pact countries were still very much behind the Iron Curtain. And, and by the way, at home, this is why I feel very strongly a lot of sympathy for the Iranian diaspora who are going through these feelings right now, hoping fervently that the regime there will collapse, but being very skeptical of it. Because I remember, even in 1988, I remember thinking, and my parents certainly thought, that there would never be a universe where the regime would end. And we would hear these stories from our family, our relatives living in the country. You wanted a car? You would wait 10 years for a car. You would wait 10 years. What baffles me about that particular truth in an economy that is controlled by the state, where they control the means of production, and this Mamdani guy uses this language all the time. So, take him at his word. I mean, this is what he would want. You can't get things. And it's funny because these privileged young socialists of America, the new Democratic voters, are all the type of people that need the latest consumer gadget. They need the latest iPhone. They need the latest fashion accessories. They'd be miserable in the country that my parents grew up in. Real socialism, they would hate it. But when a slick snake oil salesman like Zohran Mamdani comes along, they're bewitched. And I'll tell you the part of this that really rankles me here, if I can get personal for a minute. In fact, I got to take a break. Mamdani and I could not come from more different backgrounds, even though we are both children of immigrants. Although he actually immigrated in the country and is a naturalized U.S. citizen quite recently, I think 2016. But there's a big difference between his immigration story and mine. And the reason for why he is an advocate for socialism and I'm not. And it has something to do with our parents, grandparents' experiences. It's always the privileged ones. That's my clue. It's always the privileged ones, people with a ton of money and goodies in life, that are the quickest to advocate for a system that will put everybody else into abject poverty. Mark my words. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. What's Right Show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right Show at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. And of course, you can find me or email me, I should say, sam at what'srightshow.com. So talking about Democrat socialists. If you're just joining us, I'm here, I'm in Prague, visiting a country where my parents grew up and that my parents fled, ultimately coming to the U.S. And they left because, of course, they didn't want to spend the rest of their lives living in a so-called socialist utopia. And their sacrifices to come to America were immense. To do it legally were significant. And all of a sudden, my parents now, in their 70s and 80s, are looking around in America and are seeing the country start to shift leftward. Yes, a majority of the country still has common sense, but a growing and very vocal minority are advocating for a system of government that is ruinous and has literally, like cancer, destroyed everything in its path. It's a very worrisome thing for me. So I'm here in the Czech Republic and I'm thinking about this as I walk around the city, and I'm reminded of all the ways communism scarred my parents' homeland. And I started thinking about this Zohran Mamdani guy. Mamdani is, he was, okay, so he is the guy running for mayor of New York. And I keep beating this to death, but all weekend I'm on the plane. I'm, spending quite a bit of time on my iPad looking at stuff and reading things. I'm telling you, he's dangerous. He is extremely personable. He is an intelligent guy. He is good looking. He has strong persuasive skills. I think we can laugh. And, I was on with Steve Gruber on a show and doing some commentary. He called him Zohran the moron. I think it's funny. And Steve, by the way, very smart guy. He understands that Mamdani is dangerous. But we can't just be dismissive of it. The videos of him eating food with his hand because he's, from India, or his family is from a part of India originally, and so he's just ethnic eating, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's gross." Yeah, it's gross. remind me not to shake his hand. Who knows where that hand has been anyway. But that's not really the point. I don't care how you eat. I care if you are persuasive enough and have political ambition coupled with an idea, or an ideology that has been proven to be devastating and would be devastating if enacted at scale anywhere in the U.S., let alone nationally. So I was telling you before the break, I said, the guy, he's an immigrant himself. His parents came to the country with him. America has been very good to him, particularly because both of his parents, were able to emigrate to the U.S. and his dad is a famous professor at Columbia University and comes from a very wealthy family, and they had a certain amount of money, a fair amount of money in Uganda. So, and his mom has, a Wikipedia page. She's a famous filmmaker and has had a commercial success in that role. So, Zohran, this guy, running for mayor who is advocating for socialism, has described his upbringing on the Upper West Side in New York City as privileged. He has said that in interviews. Now, I thought a little bit about this. If I could compare and contrast, I don't talk about this very often, but particularly on my mother's side, my family in pre-war Czechoslovakia was one of the wealthiest families in the country. Now, I don't talk about it much because that's not who I am, but that is my background. That is my family story. And when the communists came to power, our families, lost everything. Factories were confiscated. Police, military folks would show up in the middle of the night, move people out of their homes, move them away, send, relatives that ended up in forced labor camps. Horrific stuff. And, this is, my family certainly is not only family affected by communism. This is what happened. So, but here's the thing. So obviously, once, the regime was in full swing, the type of life that my parents had was anything but privilege. Because as the ideology goes, and by the way, this is a little bit like affirmative action with race, since white people under affirmative action are privileged, they should get less and have less opportunity than the previously, disparaged and harmed class of people who are now determined to be deserving of public benefits and societal benefits. So this is what happens. So if your parents were factory workers in the previous, free government of Czechoslovakia, you were able to go to college. If you were like my parents and your grandparents were industrialists, then you weren't going anywhere. I mean, you were probably going to work in a factory. And it was a deliberate thing. So my parents, of course, first chance they get as young adults, they flee the country, seeing, of course, that the Soviets are invaded in 1968, and there was no hope at that point of anything turning around in the near term. So my parents leave the country and literally start from scratch. My mother 3 times, first in France, then in the Netherlands, and then eventually settling with my father in the U.S., 1977. When my parents came to the U.S., they had nothing. And when I was born in 1980, we grew up, I tell you, poor doesn't even begin to describe it. And it's just funny, right? This Zohran guy running around, socialism, preaching the cause, grew up in a way I could not have imagined. But I am who I am because I heard the stories of the horrors of communism, and then I had to make my way. And my parents did a lot for me. I'm not, I have nothing but gratitude for the launching point that they gave me. But, I'm a self-made guy. I'm very proud of that. And that's why I find this siren song of socialism to be so dangerous because it's catching people up. It's a problem, a big, big, big problem. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, back after this. All right, I'm getting some emails here about Trump and Elon Musk, the relationship flaring up again. I'll give you a couple thoughts on this. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. So you've got to understand, my overall sort of view of this Trump versus Elon Musk thing is that it upsets me that two people that I love are fighting. I think we are better off with Trump and Musk united than we are with them warring. And one of the things here, Musk is certainly in his rights to assist Massey, for example, Congressman Massey's, there's a primary challenger in his district. The primary challenger, incidentally, is up double digits in early polling, but Musk is going to come along. He's promised to aid any Republican. I don't think he's even limited to Republicans, to any congressman or senator this election cycle who has run previously on a platform of financial sanity and has subsequently held firm against the big, beautiful bill. Because that is what's dominating right now the discourse on Capitol Hill, the big, beautiful bill, and getting through the process there on the Hill, and a number of Republicans coming out against it. Now, just briefly about Musk, you have to understand, I know where he's coming from. I get it. Musk is a guy who, he absolutely poured his heart into Doge. He burnt through a lot of his social, political, and financial capital to do it. What I know about Musk is that he is a deeply caring guy and that he was wounded and felt the sting of the attacks on consumers whose only offense was buying a Tesla. He felt that. He watched Tesla dealerships be firebombed. He watched people's cars get vandalized. He watched all of this and he held firm. All he wanted was to know that he would make a difference and move the needle on the subject of national debt. And he feels snubbed. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just explaining to you where Musk's head is at. Now, I also actually believe Trump a little bit here when he says that he was clear with Elon Musk from the beginning about the EV mandates and the various subsidies. Now, Musk says, I don't care about the subsidies. I care about national debt. But so, there is some, but he's complaining about the subsidies too. And I've seen that, those tweets from or X posts from Elon Musk as well. So what Elon believes in principally is true. We can't just keep raising the debt ceiling in our country. That's not a good plan. Right now, however, we have a cold, hard reality that if we do not secure the border, plain and simple, we will not have a country, and the debt doesn't really matter. If I had to pick today, what do I want? Do I want a secure border? Do I want to, in the next 3 years, to ensure that in his remaining time as president, Trump liquidates every dangerous illegal immigrant, that he ships out and denaturalizes, as he has promised, citizens who hate this country were naturalized? we're not even going after illegals. I'm telling you, like, look at some of these Somalians. This is interesting. Trump, in the last couple days, they have come out and said, the White House has come out and said that they will denaturalize, meaning take away citizenship from someone who was naturalized a U.S. citizen, who became a U.S. citizen, if they've committed fraud, for example. And well, all those PPE, what is it? All the PPP loans, all the COVID era business funding. You commit fraud on that, you're out. You commit a crime, you're out. Particularly if it's a matter of moral turpitude. So, I mean, do I want to see that kind of stuff happen? Yes. Do I want to see the fight on the census? This is a bill that has been filed, I believe, by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Trump supports it, and it's a bill that would, in the 2030 census, make it so that illegal immigrants are not counted. I mean, this would be the end of the Democratic Party in Congress. Forget, but again, you can't do this. You can't move the needle significantly on protecting the border if we don't have the resources. If ICE, DHS, the Border Patrol, et cetera, are not funded. So I'm torn on this. Now, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a huge problem over the weekend because the Senate Republicans, being the absolute abject weenies that they are, did something where they allowed the parliamentarian, who is a foaming at the mouth Democrat, to control how many votes was required for a particular motion. And so ultimately, the Senate version of the bill, as of an hour ago, to my understanding, still includes funding for Medicare for illegal immigrants. This is insane. Now, if I were Elon Musk, I would. You want to move the needle on this stuff? Let's go after vulnerable Democrats. Let's go into Democrat districts. Let's get more Republicans so there are more people to get across the finish line, the kind of bill that you want. Put fiscal conservatives and, social liberals, which is, I think, what Elon Musk favors, really, essentially. Put those people on the ballot in, Democrat, Republican 50-50 purple districts. Those people have a chance of winning because in those districts, independents will decide the race, and independents will go rather for the fiscal conservative than the, socialist, democratic socialist, commie-loving, lib. So, there was. I know. I saw it. I saw this clip. Here, let me play this for you. This was just earlier today. Trump was asked on the White House lawn, waiting for his helicopter. You can hear the noise in the background. If Elon Musk would get deported by the Trump administration. Trump gave this. It was an absolute. Trump is pissed off too. So he said this about Elon Musk.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen car, it has one problem. It blows up, So I'm going to give that one to Peter. I'm going to let Peter test it out.
Now, Trump has been consistent about this electric car mandate nonsense. He's not an all-electric kind of guy. He's thought that the Green Deal is Biden stuff was crap. So that all is consistent. Now, is he going to actually deport Elon Musk? Well, we'll have to have a look at that. No. This is Trump responding to the last night volley of texts of angry, not texts, but tweets. Maybe there were texts too, tweets from Elon Musk. This is Trump's broadside at Elon. Now, I hate to see it, but but Elon's threatening a direct war and raising again the specter of supporting a third party, which of course would be criminally idiotic to do, given that third party would fracture the conservative right-wing vote and hand basically unchecked power to the Democratic Party, something that ultimately would then cost Elon Musk everything. So unless he's got a plan to move to to Mars in the next couple of years, I think this is not a wise course of action for Mr. Musk. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. So speaking of Trump, there was a great interview with RFK Jr. That Tucker Carlson did. And he asked about Trump, and RFK basically explains that he believed Trump was a narcissist, that he sort of believed everything he had seen in on television and whatnot. And as he got to know Trump, of course, he found an immensely curious, inquisitive, knowledgeable guy with in some subjects almost an encyclopedic knowledge. Certain areas. So really interesting interview. And it got me thinking, first of all, very crazy that once upon a time in in the beginning stages of the Democratic primary, remember, RFK Jr. was running against Joe Biden. And RFK was popular at a time when Biden was not. And even though the Democrats were busy lying to each other about how, sharp as a tack Joe Biden was, they had their misgivings. And so you'll remember the part of the reason what eventually drove RFK to run as an independent and ultimately join forces with Trump is that the Democratic Party pulled out all the stops to prevent him from running. Had the Democratic Party been consumed with any scruples regarding democracy, in a parallel universe somewhere, RFK Jr. could have won the nomination, become the Democratic nominee, and perhaps have defeated, certainly would have been running against Donald J. Trump. Instead, today, fast forward, we are how many days are we now in, Robbie? We are speeding by. Was 162 days of Trump 2.0. This is huge. And RFK Jr. is in the administration. So basically in the interview with Tucker, he says, look, Trump is a he's a force to be reckoned with, and he is also deeply empathetic. And one of the things he says is that narcissists, by definition, are people who lack empathy for others, right? They don't care about the feelings of another person. And then, and of course, Trump does, and RFK Jr. gives examples of that. That's a very good interview. I'm putting it out there because I believe that on some level, Trump is very wounded also by Elon Musk, and that Elon Musk has turned against him. So that's where we're gonna see some flare-ups, if you will, some conflagration. And will anything really significant come of it? Well, time will tell. We thought they patched things up. This bill, this big, beautiful bill, is obviously a major irritant for Elon Musk. And the problem is that to get consensus among, basically what amounts to over 500 lawmakers on the Hill, it's not easy. It isn't easy. So, And the Republicans are, I mean, if you look at what they're doing in the Senate, they're just absolute, weenies. They're absolute weenies. It's infuriating. So, anyway, one of the things, and I'll get to it at the top of the hour, even the liberal media has to admit that Trump is winning. They're just they're talking about it openly. Now, I'll give you an example though of a Trump win. And I don't you see this music festival in Great Britain, Glastonbury. Big music festival. Used to be, they had all sorts of rock music and whatnot. Now it's all of it was anti-Western hatred, all of it. And you had one of the performers. I mean, it was Palestinian flags, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish innuendo, flat out sloganeering. One of these guys, and I don't know, Robbie's pronounced Violin. I should know this. Bob Villain. I have no idea who this person is, but a musical performer nonetheless. And this was the music that he performed just a few days ago in Great Britain at this music festival.
Death, death to the IDF, 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 death, death to the IDF. Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Okay, that's great. He was supposed to go on a U.S. tour. But guess what happened? The Trump administration said, not so fast, good sir. You are not going to be accepted. And they yanked his visa. This is the kind of robust action that we want, no? Why would we go out of our ways as a country to welcome immigrants, visitors even, who want to do us harm? In the past, the Democratic Party made that their mission. The entire purpose of bringing people to this world again, to this country, was to bring folks in that would advance the interest of the Democratic Party, which is, of course, to crap on America. And you almost understand statistically what it's all about, because there's just a study released about patriotism. I don't know, you saw this? 92% of Republicans are extremely or very proud to be an American. So of registered or self-identifying, I should say, Republicans, 92% of them are very or extremely patriotic. What do you think the percentage is on the Democratic side? You think it's, well, I'm asking you, Robbie, I'm asking, is it 70? You think it's 70? 70, maybe more, maybe like 80? I mean, we think it's probably less than Republicans, right? I wonder if anybody is actually shocked by the fact that it's only 36% of Republicans. And if you look at the chart from, starting in 2001 to 2025, back in 2001, it'd be interesting to see, when this happened, if it was after September 11th or before. It was basically, looks like 90% Republican, 87% Democrat, and independents actually slightly less than that. Republicans then, in a few short years during the early stages of the Gulf War, shot up to almost 100%. Okay. And Democrats went down and pretty much consistently down. But there was a high somewhere. Let me tell you, there was a high somewhere in, looks like 2013. Well, not a high. It was, but it was a relative high, and basically been cratering ever since. 36% now of identifying Democrats, self-identifying Democrats, patriotic. Now, It's to the point now, I think you almost could safely assume that if you see a flag, American flag in front of somebody's house, I almost believe they're conservative. They're Republicans living there, which is absurd because we should have our political differences. We can disagree, but we should love the country. In fact, your ideas for how this country ought to be different than mine, but we ought to both care about this country enough to express our opinions. That boggles the mind. Well, now maybe it'll change. CNN coming out with some nice things about Trump. You do not want to miss this. Back in a moment. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I'll get to the Trump stuff on CNN in a moment, but have you heard about Jaguar? Not the animal, the car manufacturer. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I take this as sad, but good news. You know, Jaguar is a British luxury car maker. When I was a kid, Jaguar, I was this, well, for us, certainly unattainable luxury. My neighbors at one point, the neighbor started doing pretty well, and at one moment bought his wife a Jag. This would have been maybe around 1992, 1993, and the whole thing was just chromed and had, just polished to perfection. Let me put it that way. Chrome inside and out. An absolute gorgeous car. Now, over time, it's just my opinion, as it's, I think, sold to Tata Motors, a Indian concern. The cars just turned into plastic crap. But then Jaguar decided to do a rebrand. Do you remember the ad? Well, I'm bringing this up because they came up with some crazy sales figures that are starting to get talked about. So Jaguar put out this ad. Those of you who are listening and not watching, you do not have the Sam Cam. I will describe to you what I see. So here's the ad that Jaguar dropped. This would have been probably about 6 months ago is when this campaign launched. And it was every bit as terrible as you can imagine. But first off, there was no car in the ad. There's no car. This came out, here, Robbie's telling me, on the 19th of November of last year. So pretty recent. Okay, here's the ad. Mind you, this is a car ad, in case you're wondering. All right, everybody looks trans and multiracial. Live vivid, some guy, Andy Warhol type painting, androgynous man, woman, whatever. Now they're all sitting on a rock, these models, looking left, right. Dystopian thing of nightmares. This is like if you had the people who did the moon landing videography also work on the Teletubbies, sort of merge the two. Horrifying stuff. So they put this ad out, and predictably has not been good news for Jag. You want to know what the sales figures are? This is why it's making news. I'm just reporting the facts. Apparently in Europe, okay, in April, which is the last month for which we have figures, a year ago before the ad, Jaguar sold almost 2,000 vehicles, 1,961 units. Guess how many they sold in April of 2025? 49. That's it. 49. They didn't even break into the 50s. Jag in Europe sold 49 cars. And it's just a disaster. It's disaster everywhere. In Australia, in the U.S., this is great. And why is this great? Because It follows the footsteps of Bud Light. These companies that are pushing this woke crap are getting their fannies handed to them. And rightly so. We're done seeing these androgynous, weird, sexually ambiguous, bizarro ads. The Dylan Mulvaney's. We're done with this, right? You're sick of it. I'm sick of it. And apparently a lot of other people are sick of it. And here's what fascinates me. In Europe, what do you always hear about Europe? And I'm here right now. The show's coming to you from Prague, although Prague is not particularly, the Czech Republic, not particularly woke. But what do you think of in Europe? You think, these people are a little bit more socially progressive. I am convinced that actually when it comes to this, that Europe is just, the silent majority is cowed into silence. It's a vocal minority of people that are pushing the radical agenda. It's like that in the U.S. And if you start to look at what states don't have voter ID and what states, do a lot of, monkeying with vote results, you start to realize that the blue states out there might actually be attainable for Republicans. If Trump certainly gets his way with immigration. So I still maintain that there is room for sanity in this world and that the glass is half full. Now, one other indicator of this is that something big happened at CNN. And this, it's big. This was on Saturday. Michael Smerconish, who is not a MAGA conservative, wink, wink. He is anything but that. And he literally delivered, what was this, a 9-minute, 10-minute segment? I'm going to take you through it here, piece by piece, because it's literally a masterpiece. Smerconish does basically a Trump's wins segment, telling his audience that there's no way to cut it, other than Trump is actually succeeding and doing great things. Here is Smerconish's take on Iran and the situation in the Middle East.
The mission was carried out with stealth and with precision. There were no American casualties. And while Congress is divided after receiving briefings on the extent of the damage, I'm sure that we've derailed Iran's nuclear program, at least temporarily. And there's some valuable deterrent effect for America's adversaries who witnessed last week's exercise. Then, last Tuesday, President Trump left the White House en route to Europe. At the time, there was a question as to whether Israel and Iran would honor a ceasefire. That caused the president to offer the most unfiltered, non-controversial, direct words that I can recall anybody ever saying about the Middle East.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
And that was just the beginning. Smerconish then talked about his arrival in NATO at the summit at The Hague. Another win, according to Smerconish, for Trump. And all of this on CNN.
Cut to The Hague, where he arrived for NATO meetings and was able to wrangle an agreement from our allies to more than double their defense spending target from 2% of gross domestic product to 5% by 2035. Also, while at NATO, in a press availability, he did something rare for Trump and I found rewarding. He showed empathy. It came in an exchange with a Ukrainian journalist who said that her husband was a soldier. She asked whether the U.S. would supply her country with Patriot missiles.
Are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Wow.
And
I can see you very, it's amazing.
And me with the kids, I'm in Warsaw actually, because he wanted me to be.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He is.
He's there now. They do want to have the anti-missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available. I wish you a lot of luck. I can see it's very upsetting to you. So say hello to your husband, okay?
Also in that presser, he was more reflective and respectful than usual of our allies.
They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff, and we're here to help them protect their country.
You know, again, this was the summit where Trump was able to convince successfully our allies in NATO to up their spending to 5%, military spending to 5% of their GDP. Previously, these countries couldn't even make it to 2%. And while there's, some controversy around this, whether the countries will actually be able to, in Europe, some of them to meet this this objective, right? This goal, Trump got important movement on this topic. Before, we just carried the burden for everybody. Well, we said, look, we will help, but you have to meet us not even halfway. And they're willing to do it. And here is it literally, you have CNN celebrating this. They're celebrating it, and again, Michael Smerconish of all people. And on the economy, he continued there.
Back at home, Trump claimed that he's reached a trade deal with China and soon expects the same with India. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Bloomberg that the deal was signed earlier this week. China's Commerce Ministry said Friday the two sides had further confirmed the details of the framework. Of course, Trump's initial imposition of tariffs wreaked havoc on American markets back in the spring. But now the markets have rebounded and grown. The S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs just yesterday. And it's not just the stock market. Inflation, the great economic fear of recent times, seems to be tamed. The rate is now reported at 2.4%, down from a high of 7% just 4 years ago. Meanwhile, blue-collar workers have seen real wage growth of 1.7% in Trump's first 5 months. This is the largest such increase in nearly 3 generations. Notwithstanding its impact on our national debt, there's also hope among some that Trump's big, beautiful bill will give further financial relief to blue-collar workers, as well as create incentives to build more factories in the U.S. Some already see this happening. For instance, General Electric has just announced that it'll invest almost $500 million in moving production of washing machines from China to Kentucky.
This on the heels of, or actually right in front of, Trump sending to Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, a handwritten note on a list of countries from lowest to highest world central bank rates. Jerome, you are, as usual, too late. You've cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars being lost. No inflation. And it shows Switzerland, Cambodia, Japan, Denmark being all at a central bank rate of 0.25% to 1.75%, has us at the bottom at 4.5%. We are number 35. Below us is Cameroon. 37 is Equatorial Guinea, Guatemala, Israel, Mauritius, Norway, the Republic of Congo, and Vietnam. Wow. Maybe Trump has a point. And by the way, the more stories that come out on CNN about his economic policies working and about inflation being lower, the more likely we are, I think, to see some movement from the Federal Reserve, which would be huge, or at least a political capital for Trump to remove Jerome Powell and replace him with someone who will do something about interest rates. They are high, no question about it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. We'll be back in a moment, folks. Don't go anywhere. Don't turn the dial. I'm here.
The Sam Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. So CNN, I'm just playing this incredible commentary by Michael Smerconish about Trump's successes so far in his first term. Trump is roughly 6 months in to the term, 162 days and counting. And Smerconish here going through the foreign policy successes, talking about Iran, talking about Trump's trip to The Hague, to the Netherlands, meeting with our NATO allies, being compassionate to a woman who was affected by the Ukraine war, her husband fighting in that war, and respectful, quote unquote, to our allies, who, by the way, Trump succeeded in getting our allies in NATO to pony up some cash. Then he talks about the economy and how successful it is. And after covering those topics, he doesn't stop there. He gets into the subject of immigration.
And then there's the border. Crossings have slowed to a trickle. According to CBP's May update, Southwest border encounters have fallen to about 282 a day, a drop of 93% from last year and the lowest since the early 1960s. Perhaps the loudest cheering for those border numbers is coming from America's Latino community, which might initially sound counterintuitive. On Thursday, Pew Research released an enormous data analysis of the 2024 election, which contained several surprises. High on that list, President Trump won a bigger percentage of the Latino vote than previously believed. Hillary Clinton had a 38% lead over Trump among Hispanics in 2016. Joe Biden beat Trump in this demo by 25 percentage points. Kamala Harris's margin among these same voters over Trump, just 3 points. Even more surprising, perhaps, Pew Research concludes that if everyone had voted in 2024, contrary to the widely held belief that higher turnout helps Democrats, Trump would still have won. The data show 44% of non-voters said that they would have gone for Trump compared to 40% of non-voters who would have gone for Harris. So if more had voted, his margin would have grown.
This is, by the way, if you were listening to me in the run-up to the election, something I was talking about every week. When some of you were typing out long missive emails, which, by the way, I read every word and I sympathize, the agony that we all experienced losing back in 2020, thinking we had it all in the bag. I said, okay, I understand we're going to have fraud. We're going to have this, that, and the other. The Biden people are going to pull every dirty trick they've got in the book. But look at the poll numbers. Look at the Hispanics that are fed up with illegal immigration. Look at how many people want deportations. This didn't exist back in 2016 or in 2020. Biden, or whoever the hell was running the auto pen machine, okay, opened the border, the floodgates to such an extent that it absolutely poisoned common sense America, whether it's, whatever color it is, all of common sense America, to say, you know what, this is too much. And the problem that the pro-immigration side, and I'm a pro-immigrant, by the way, a huge supporter of immigration in this country, and we will need significant legal immigration to make up for the jobs that are the positions we need. I know this, but I'm all about the front door, right? Going in through the front door, vetting these people, getting them legalized, getting them put in the mainstream, making sure that they are productive, because those are the immigrants. Incidentally, the productive citizens are the ones, immigrants and future citizens, that aren't coming here for the handout like they were under Biden. Those are the people that are also going to be the strongest for us politically. But that is what the data showed, right? Every time they did any kind of survey, Pew did a survey before the election too, by the way. Now they've just confirmed it again, that even Hispanics, predominantly majority for immigration reform, meaning, and specifically deportations even. So Smirkonish is pointing this out. Can you imagine the average CNN viewer must have been, as we're watching this, must have been getting the vapors. And then after rubbing it in their faces, Trump wins and he's right on immigration. People, at least people support him on immigration. Then Smirkonish says this about the Supreme Court. This is where people really must have gone off the edge.
Yesterday came a huge decision from the Supreme Court. The High Court declared that federal district judges exceeded their authority when issuing nationwide injunctions against Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. This will, of course, strengthen executive power both for Trump and for his successors.
Amazing. And this, at that point, I think, every liberal watching CNN, which is most of the people watching CNN, must have been passed out. Fairly confident of that. Okay, I got bottom of the hour. Time is flying today. I am so sorry. I try to get to everything. I am. But this was too good to pass up. I love that the truth is getting out. This is amazing. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. This week we are on the road, not in my usual studio, as you can tell from the background here. Those of you watching the Sam Cam, I am in the Czech Republic in Prague. And yeah, but anyway, if you missed the first part of the program explaining why I'm here, then certainly please get the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. We use most of the platforms out there. So if you can't find me, email me, sam@whatsrightshow.com. I explained in the first couple of segments here on the program why I'm here, and also about all these Democratic socialists running around the U.S. basically hoping for and advocating for a system of government that had been tried here in the Czech Republic, then Czechoslovakia, and other countries in Eastern Europe, and had caused unspeakable harm and damage and loss of life and loss of liberty, financial pain and suffering for millions of people. It's funny because this interview I've been playing here, Michael Smirkonish on CNN, basically coming out and saying that saying Trump is racking up all these wins. One of the things he mentioned specifically was this Zohran Mahmoud guy running for mayor in New York. Is it good or bad that we have Mr. Mamdani getting the Democratic nomination, Chuck Schumer, Jerry Nadler, and other so-called mainstream Democrats all lining up to endorse this radical socialist, he describes himself as such, running for office now with the imprimis of the Democratic Party behind him? Listen to what CNN thinks about this politically for Trump.
A Democratic socialist just won the nomination for mayor of New York City. And perhaps you're wondering, well, how does that affect Trump? It gives him the perfect foil, someone to play off in future political battles. This morning's New York Post references campaign literature for Zohran Mamdani, which advocates for increased taxation for, quote, richer and whiter neighborhoods. Just imagine what Trump will do with that.
So, don't you agree? The left has invested, and by this I mean the media, and frankly CNN, they have invested so much energy into labeling Trump an extremist. Trump is an extremist. He hates black people. He hates brown people. He hates anyone who isn't white and basically a Nazi. Trump wants to make America white again. Look, there I'm just repeating the things that have been said historically about Trump. And by the way, the media and Democrats running for office have made, from Hillary Clinton through Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, made a terrible mistake of attacking Trump supporters. Because they don't just attack Trump, they attack us too. They call us Nazis. They call us deplorables. They call us less than human because of our political opinion. Now, along comes not just AOC, not just Ilhan Omar, not just the other squad member. Yeah, the whole cabal, right? Now you got this guy who is running for mayor in New York, and he literally is coming out calling himself a democratic socialist, advocating for socialism, advocating for the abolishment of billionaires. He said that in an interview. Somebody asks him, well, so you're running for mayor, okay, aren't you a little worried about these, billionaires are going to leave New York, and because he's going to raise taxes up the wazoo. And his answer literally is, well, I don't think we should have billionaires at all. Like, I mean, if you really ask me. But he says it in such a charming, cute way, and people are just nodding along, going, yeah, we should just do, you're right, we shouldn't have billionaires. Who the hell is going to pay for it? New York City. Look, I'm going to digress here. New York City. The people that make $1 million or more, which in New York actually is not that much money after you consider, half of it goes to taxes and, lifestyle is expensive. $1 million a year or more in New York. Those people pay 40% of the city budget. What happens when those people leave? What happens when property values crater and the taxes collected on that property diminishes by whatever that percentage is? What happens when just a few key taxpayers say, and we're done here, sayonara? It all goes to hell, doesn't it? So, anyway, so now Trump can use this and go, listen, you think I'm extreme? I just want to make America great again. I want to secure the border. I want to help raise wages for working class Americans. I want to help. The Trump platform, right? Trump's platform is what the Democratic Party's platform used to be once upon a time. Trump's platform is something akin to a JFK mixed with Bill Clinton. If JFK could feel people's pain, that's Trump, okay? And now the Democratic parties go, I have an answer to this. We're going to go full socialist. And as I have said, referencing a great comedy that probably couldn't be made today, Tropic Thunder, you never go full retard, as a great actor said in that film. Well, I'm saying it here. You never go full socialist. And this guy's doing it, and other Democrats are following suit. And it's dangerous, and I stand by that. But it is also an opportunity for Trump, an immense opportunity, to say, you think I'm literally, I just want to make America great again. These guys want to turn America into the Soviet Union. But it's going to take a lot of effort, and we Republicans can't be asleep at the wheel on this. We've got to fight it. It's got to be the right candidates, because it's certainly not going to be it's not going to be the mushy Republicans in the Senate that are going to be any reasonable any opposition to these kind of charming, young, personable, and attractive candidates that the left is going to run. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, to finish it all up, Smirkonish on CNN says, left used to use the winning word as an insult to Trump, but now Trump is actually truly winning. I never thought I would live to see the day to hear these words on CNN.
Winning became a punchline. that Trump's opponents used to lampoon him in his first administration. He was a political novice then, surrounded by a team with which he was unfamiliar, and he was probably as surprised as the rest of us were that he won the election. This time is different. This time he came with a plan and a cabinet with senior advisors comprised of loyalists all well known to the president. And recently, he's exhibited a more layered approach to governing on both the domestic and international front, no longer solely guided by winning each day's news cycle. By any objective measure, President Trump has his opponents on the run.
This is huge. Now, don't get me wrong, CNN then proceeded to step in it with a very controversial segment talking about, right, an app that some Democrat designed that tracks ICE in real time so that immigrants can be warned of impending raids. This is the segment that was run on Monday on CNN about this ICE tracker.
One tech developer is pushing back with an app designed to track ICE activity in real time. It's called ICE Block, and it's controversial to say the least. Senator Claire Duffy is with us now. How does this work, Claire, and what are the legal implications?
Yeah, John, I talked with Joshua Aaron, who is the longtime tech worker who developed this platform, and he said he really wants it to be an early warning system for people about the location of immigrations and customs enforcement officers. So he says he does not want people interfering with those officers' activity, but he does want people to be able to avoid them altogether if they want. So you open the app, it looks like a map, and users can tap the map to report an ICE sighting in their area, and then everybody who uses the platform within 5 miles of that sighting will get a push alert. This is a free iPhone app. It is anonymous. Aaron says he doesn't collect any user data. And what I think is really interesting about this in this moment is we've seen so many of the biggest leaders in tech supporting President Trump, but Aaron is sort of an example of the fact that there are people within the tech industry who are really resistant to Trump's policies. I asked him what he would say to those tech leaders who, for example, were at the inauguration. Here's what he told me. Take a listen.
I understand that you have shareholders to report to. I understand that you have employees that need their paychecks. But at what point do you say enough is enough?
So CNN, part of the opposition to Trump, I guess they didn't get the memo on winning from Michael Smerconish. But, here's my sense. I think this is protected under the First Amendment. I think that people can warn each other of officer movements. I don't necessarily know that this is an impeding offense, that it's a problem legally. But I just think that the easy solution here is that conservatives ought to go on this app, download it, and flood it 24/7 with all sorts of wrong information. And send it, make it go haywire, right? That's the solution, right? Just flood it with bad information and render it completely useless. There's no law against that either. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Earlier today, down in Florida, Trump was on the ground to look at the Alligator Alcatraz prison holding facility for illegal immigrants. Wow. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Believe it or not, he was side by side with Governor DeSantis, and DeSantis dropped a huge bomb. I don't think anybody noticed this. I did. It's a big deal. Here, DeSantis talking with Trump again, side by side in Florida, right after the tour, says that Florida National Guardsmen will be deputized as federal immigration judges. Listen.
This is we're offering up our National Guard and other folks in Florida to be deputized to be immigration judges. We're working with the Department of Justice for the approvals. I'm sure Pam will approve. But then I'll have a National Guard judge advocate here. Someone has a notice to appear. Biden would tell them to come back in 3 years and appear. Now you'll be able to appear in like a day or two, so they're not going to be detained, hopefully, for all that long. We'll have people here in this facility that can make, it's a bureaucracy. The president's got to deal with the bureaucracy. Now, that Supreme Court ruling was good because that's going to allow him to be able to exercise Article 2 the way founders intended, but you still have bureaucracy. So we want to cut through that so that we have an efficient operation between Florida and DHS to get the removal of these illegals done.
All right. It's just incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. By the way, notice Trump and DeSantis sounds confident. He looks presidential. Trump is there. The two of them clearly have made up. This is what I keep telling you folks about. Everybody's panicking about Elon Musk. Trump is capable of making up with people. I don't know if Elon is. The autism runs deep there, but Trump definitely is capable of making up, and you see it right here. You see it really quite evident with DeSantis. Now, this is an opportunity for DeSantis. DeSantis obviously understands how important immigration, the topic of immigration is, and so he's signing up for it, and he's supporting Trump. And I obviously this is a play for the presidency where I anticipate that DeSantis will once again in 2028 run in the Republican primary. I just don't imagine a universe where he doesn't do that. So that happened. And by the way, a lot of people getting on this alligator Alcatraz thing. It's a stunt. No, it's put together. They're basically chain link cells. They're put together in a couple of weeks. They needed a facility to house illegals. They can ship them there. They can wait to see a judge, get their due process. The judges are, again, I told you this due process doesn't mean that you get a guy in robes. There's just somebody there who is going through, okay, let me see the paperwork. Let me see the document. Okay, yes, you are deportable. Out you go. Pew. Now, how my friends back in Newport in California, Newport Beach, California, if you've ever been, there's a shopping center in the heart of Newport called Fashion Island. And I think it was built, I think 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And then when I was a kid, got rebuilt substantially. So kind of late 80s, 90s, early 90s, got a big expansion. But it's a famous shopping center, heart of Newport. Some of the fanciest real estate, most expensive offices are around there, mostly owned by the Irvine Company. And there's a car wash. It used to be Beacon Bay, I think was the name of it. Now it's different hands, different ownership. But regardless, all over the internet, and my friends from Newport calling me saying, Sam, you're not going to believe this. ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, they showed up at that car wash, and the guys that are washing cars, go running. They're running down the street in the heart of Newport Beach. The car wash had to close down. Now, people are losing their minds over this. I told you that I would get back to this topic of immigration because at the beginning of the hour, I was mentioning my background. I mentioned my parents, of course, coming to this country legally. And my whole childhood, of course, grew up hearing about my parents' struggle. And they moved here from, well, first, imagine the circuitous path to get to America. My mom leaves Prague, at a very young age. I think she was 21. Leaves Prague, goes to Paris, finds herself in Paris, right? 21 years old, doesn't know anybody, has to start over, fleeing, right, the Soviet invasion of her country. She then goes, knew my dad from before, but they, initiate a relationship, and she eventually moves to where he is in the Netherlands. And then together they, she starts over there, and then they decide in 1977 to come to the U.S. My mom gets a position at Northwestern University, just outside of Chicago in Evanston. So my mom comes to the U.S. as a postdoc teaching assistant and researcher at Northwestern, and I mean, we were poor. My parents did everything right. They never took a handout. They never broke any laws. My dad, when he didn't have, because my dad came as her husband, so he didn't have a work permit, so he couldn't work. And so I'm sorry. I have limited sympathy for this. But Sam, the economy, this is going to be a suffering for the economy. Do you remember once upon a time that car washes hired kids? Like, I understand, right? I understand that California law favors illegal immigrant under-the-counter, pay them under-the-counter cash labor. And then everybody else has ridiculous minimum wage. I get that. California is going to have to fix some things because, you're going to get some college kids who would rather do this. I mean, when I went to college, by the way, I worked at the university. I worked at UCI my first year, and I was making $5.25 an hour. The university is allowed to pay kids, slave wages, which is why I left there very quickly and went to work for a law firm. The law firm was paying $12 an hour, just to give you an idea, right? Entry-level pay. But, these jobs need to go to Americans or resident aliens. It's just simple. And they'll be out there to work. It will right itself. So much of what Trump is doing is working out. Trust in this one. I got to run. All right, be back tomorrow. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840.